So I was recently watching a TED Talk by Celeste Heedle, and she made the very accurate and very funny, in my opinion, remark that every time somebody is asking for advice on how to become a better conversationalist or how to hold a conversation, the prevailing narrative for the past few decades seems to be something that resembles the teachings of Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady, aka stick to the weather and your health. But unfortunately, nowadays, with climate change and vax and anti-vax conversations, one can't even stick to those subjects anymore. And despite the increased difficulty in mastering the art of conversation in a world that offers minimal to no opportunities for us to actually hone our interpersonal and social skills, in this video, I will try to present to you actionable steps or ways in which you can start a conversation with pretty much anyone, how to retain a conversation, and also how to leave a memorable impression to the people you actually hold conversations with. It is true that the world is getting more and more digitalized by the day, yet being able to use our own voice, ideas and opinions in order to express ourselves, to form relationships, to do business, to expand our network and get public recognition remains one of the most valuable and powerful skills one can acquire. Because being a great conversationalist is actually a skill that pretty much anyone can acquire with sufficient practice and some great tips. For context, in case you're wondering why should you care about anything that I have to say, I have been a communication specialist for several years. I have worked as one for governmental bodies, political entities, companies in the luxury goods industry, and on top of that, I have created an amazing community of over 80,000 people online in the last few months using my own voice, my own opinions, my own ideas, and by giving people a reason to care about what is it that I have to say. Chapter number 1, how to start a conversation with pretty much anyone. My first advice would be the fact that your energy precedes you, and so the wisest thing to do when you want to start a conversation with someone is to try to get a positive emotional response out of them instead of trying to convince your way into the conversation. So if you want to start a conversation with someone, just approach them with a smile on your face and say hi or hello instead of hi, I was just sitting over there and I just saw you and I just thought that maybe I could talk to you, blah, 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 blah. Advice number 2, small talk doesn't break the ice, it wastes people's time and it decreases your chances of actually having a conversation with anyone. So many times, in fear of coming off as rude or being too abrupt, we tend to start conversations by beating around the bush for like 10 minutes and asking useless questions like, so are you having a good time? Or it's been freezing the past few days, hasn't it? Or how is everything going? How are you feeling today? None of it breaks the ice. Instead, it adds another level of awkwardness that you somehow need to bypass later on. Think about it this way. If you were the one who was being approached by somebody else, would you rather be asked for 10 minutes small talkish questions, or would you rather have someone come to you and say, hello, I hope you're having a great time. I heard your speech earlier and you mentioned how you went to X university, and actually I'm starting university this fall at this exact university, so I was just wondering if you could share your experience with me. I don't know about you, but I would much rather be asked the second question, and I do believe it's the same for the majority of people. Which brings me to my third advice, and that is to ask open-ended, personalized questions. If you ask someone, so did you like university? The answer is no, I didn't, or yes, I did, which is not much of a useful answer, is it? I mean, it doesn't progress the conversation and it doesn't help you personally because there's not much information there. On the other hand, if you were to ask someone, so how was your experience at Harvard? Then you let the other person choose the story they actually want to tell, and that story will be significantly longer than the yes or no response. This is actually a very, very useful technique when it comes to starting a conversation, because Deep down, we are all somewhat selfish, aka we all love to talk about ourselves. So when you're asking open-ended, personalized questions, you are giving the other person the opportunity to say so many things about themselves and about their experience. And during that narration, you get to have more questions. There are more concepts that arise, and therefore you can later add on more questions and continue having a conversation with that person. Open-ended, personalized questions just help progress the conversation so much, and it helps you identify common links to the other person. And that is exactly my fourth advice: common ground. You can't really start a conversation if you don't have a mutual agreement of understanding. One of my professors at university used to say that starting a conversation, or having a conversation in general, is like building a house. You can't do anything if you don't have solid foundations. I know that it seems very obvious, but you would be surprised on how many conversations I have been where one person starts talking about something that they're very passionate about, and they just keep going on and on and on and on, and everybody else just sits there just nodding and saying, yeah, I get it. When in reality, they don't, either because they're not interested in the conversation altogether, or because they don't have sufficient information in order to be part of that conversation to begin with. In the example that I used before, the exact university that both these people went or are about to go is the common link. This is what helps these people have a conversation and let the conversation move forward. But if I was about to say to someone, well, what do you think about Madonna? And that person didn't even know who Madonna is, then we can't really have a conversation on that, can we? So my advice would be start from something that you have in common and then build from there. Advice number 5, be confident. You can't be wrong if you are being you. And by the way, it is incredibly difficult to hold a conversation with a person that is very visibly uncomfortable and anxious, because it stresses you out, and you also can't even focus on anything that they're saying because you're too distracted because of their overall composure. Most people, when presented with this logic, they try to counter that argument by saying that they're just scared that they might say something wrong, or they just come off as wrong. But the reality is that conversations are not a history class. There is nothing to be wrong or right about. If you are being you, then there is nothing you could do or say that is wrong. Authenticity isn't just an amazing conversation starter, but is also an amazing way to actually be remembered. Chapter number 2, how to retain a conversation. Advice number 1, don't equate your experiences with theirs. There is nothing more demotivating when you're in the middle of narrating a story or sharing your opinion or your experience on something, and then the other person keeps interrupting you in order to let you know that they have also been there, they have also done that, they also know this important person, they have also went through this tragedy that you also went through, that they have also had your life somehow, and they have also felt the things that you have felt. Don't be a Karen, let people talk and let people own their lives. Advice number 2. And then in November 2021, or was it 2022? Well, anyways, it was a Monday morning. Skip all those small specific details. They don't help you make your argument. They bore the other person, and they give them absolutely no motive to want to continue talking to you. Advice number 3, take the shortcut. I mean, we all love the sound of our own voices, sometimes, but in reality, being in demand also means that you have to come in scarcity. Don't take too long to explain things, and don't repeat yourself over and over and over again. Just cover the subject adequately, and then let people come to you if they have more questions, or if they want to hear you talk about this thing that you were talking about for longer. Advice number 4, end but therefore. This is something that we talk about very, very often when it comes to narration on social media, because it is a framework that helps a lot to retain people's attention, and also makes you look a little bit more knowledgeable, which can't hurt, can it? So basically, when you're trying to structure your sentences, instead of saying and I went to her house and she wasn't there and then I had to go. You say, and I went to her house, but she wasn't there, therefore I had to go. Advice number 5. Prosody, pace, and depth can literally make or break a conversation. Prosody basically refers to our ability to not talk in a monotonous way, because let's be honest, it is very, very difficult to be engaged in a conversation or follow an argument when somebody can't talk like they are an actual machine without having any alterations in their voice. Pace is also very, very important. Most people think that if they talk fast and they say as much information as possible, then somehow that makes them look more knowledgeable. But in reality, talking slower, making pauses, makes you look way more knowledgeable, and at the same time, it allows you time to think of your next argument, and it gives the other person also time to absorb and reflect on the information that you have given them, instead of having to deal with the migraine-causing Armageddon of words. Lastly, the depth of your voice can positively or negatively predisposition people towards you. In fact, Julian Treasure makes the very, very accurate remark that we tend to vote for politicians that have a lower voice because we tend to associate depth with authority. You can't really do that, and you can't really do that aren't the same thing, are they? Chapter number 3, a memorable impression. Advice number 1. Your dogmatism makes you extremely predictable, and being predictable is actually the fastest way possible to be forgotten. It is true that we all have certain topics or subjects that we are very passionate about and that we have very strong opinions on. But the principle of having a conversation is people's willingness to exchange views and listen to the other person. You don't need to be convinced by the other person's opinions, but you need to be open to discussing, negotiating. People will remember you if they had an interesting and engaging conversation with you, if they were able to exchange views and opinions, not if they were able to predict every single opinion and viewpoint that you had because it was coming straight out of some sort of political or otherwise agenda. Advice number 2. This is not so much about the conversation, but mostly about you, but you have way higher chances of being remembered if you can verbally stimulate people, but simultaneously visually stimulate them. Taking care of your outfit and your appearance, looking polished and snatched and put together, helps people put a face on your voice. And I know it sounds unfair, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. My last and most important advice on how to leave a memorable impression is to not try to fit in. This one is a little bit tricky for me to explain, but my overall observation when it comes to who can leave a memorable impression, who can hack attention, who can be remembered, is that almost always it is the people who don't play by the book. It's the people that don't say what they're supposed to say. It's the people who are not trying to be who they're supposed to be. It's the people who are not trying to always be politically correct. It's the people that care more about being themselves than somehow fitting in the box that somebody else has for them. Especially when we're trying to have conversations with people that are somehow above us, job interviewers, people we admire, famous personalities, our heroes, our professors, or whoever that might be. We tend to play this silly game of trying to adopt the ideas, behaviors, opinions that we think they would approve. We try to hold conversations with absolutely no confrontation. But in reality, and in my experience, what really makes for a memorable impression, what really ensures that we will be remembered, is the courage to be us, and the courage to even be disliked, and the courage to speak our minds, especially when everybody else chooses not to. Being you is truly your golden ticket. Thank you so much for watching yet another pretty long video. If you did like this video and if you did find it useful, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, a comment, as it really helps the algorithm understand that this is a valuable video. As per usual, you will find all of my links, all of my resources in the description box below. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and now we'll see you on my next video.